Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alex Chisnell from the Festival of Enterprise. Those of you who've been watching the last couple of weeks will no doubt be sick of the sight of me, but we've got Andrea here today as well, and we're bringing up her presentation on preparing to restart your business very soon. So hope you're all safe and well. Entering week 4 now, aren't we, after the long Easter bank holiday weekend. So kind of all merges into one. Just talking routines with somebody this morning, a future guest next week, and how important they are at this time. Otherwise, you end up like one of these people on a onesie watching Netflix all day, I think, which I haven't succumbed to. I don't know about you, Andrea.
No, not yet. I've not reached those levels yet.
Too busy working, me.
I know.
Yeah. So today, post up your questions for Andrea in the chat box is the easiest, and she'll do her best to answer them. We've got a lot of people on today's webinar, which is great to see. Let us know if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, owner, employee. We'd love to know what kind of audience we've got today. Just to introduce Andrea, she's an international trade specialist with 22 plus years in the industry, an MBA graduate and linguist fluent in both French and Spanish, and she specializes in export and Brexit preparedness. So recent years have saw Andrea exporting her own market research company services to Europe and the US as well. A passionate ambassador of UK micro businesses and SMEs, she launched the export department to assist these companies expand their horizons internationally and raise the profile of UK goods and services abroad. So question to you to start with, Andrea, how are things looking at the moment for you? What have you noticed the last couple of weeks? Has it been falling off the edge of a cliff, or have it just been more gradual slide?
It's busy at our end, to be honest. I'm a trainer for the Institute of Export, and we've been able to move much of our training courses to webinars, which has been quite interesting, and delivering them via Teams. So we're still able to deliver virtual training. But also in terms of the export department and what we've been working on over recent months has been a lot about business resilience as well, which obviously comes into play with Covid-19. So we have seen companies move away from the preparing for leaving the EU, which was obviously on everybody's minds at the beginning part of the year, to actually just getting through the next few months and getting their businesses in prime shape to restart once the restrictions are lifted. So that's really where we're focused at the moment. We do have some clients that we're still working with on leaving the EU and on their Brexit strategy, but the vast majority are actually focusing on business resilience and how do we get through the next 60 to 90 days and restart our businesses successfully when we're given the green light.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? From you think not that long ago, every other sentence contained the B word, and now hardly heard it. Like you say, everybody is just focusing on getting through this. I mean, I've spoken to some people just yesterday whose business helps clients in the US scale up the business in the US, and picking up clients, still doing well at this time. And another somebody I spoke to this morning, busy exporting to Japan and other countries, doing really well, raising investment, which a lot of people again might be struggling with that and finding that difficult. But I think if you set things up before this and the wheels are still in motion, and if you've got good relationships with people, then like you say, resilience is key at this time. Yeah. Okay, so as I say, everybody, thank you for joining us today. Any questions, please post them up for Andrea, and we'll do our best to answer them throughout today's presentation. In the meantime, I'm going to focus the screen on Andrea's presentation.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. As the title denotes, today is about kind of moving beyond panic mode, which we've all been in for the last couple of months, and thinking more about the future and kind of regaining control. A lot of business owners out there are feeling like they've lost control, like things have been taken out of their hands. And this is about regaining control and focusing on the future and focusing on things that you can be doing now that help cement your relaunch. Because as several entrepreneurs have come out recently and said that actually starting back up is going to be like businesses starting in startup mode again. It's going to be a change of mindset, and it's about how you can use this downtime productively to make sure that you emerge from this crisis stronger than you went into it. So I prepared a few slides. Please feel free to post your questions as and when, and I'll do my best to answer them, but some of them may be answered as we go through the presentation anyway. But if you look at the current situation, so COVID-19 pandemic is first and foremost a health crisis, but it's rapidly becoming an economic one too. Measures needed to contain the virus, including self-isolation by workers and consumers, which we're all doing, and closure of factories and shops and bans on sports and entertainment activities are all starting to take their toll on the economy. If we look at China, where COVID-19 first struck, industrial production fell by 13.5% and seasonally adjusted retail sales are down by 21%. Some sectors have almost completely collapsed, and car sales fell by 92% and restaurant sales dropped by 95%. So it all sounds very dire at the moment. Chancellor Rishi Sunak himself expressed yesterday deep concerns after the Office for Budget Responsibility announced that the UK economy could shrink by some 35%. And unemployment could rise by some 2 million. This makes PricewaterhouseCoopers forecast that I've put there seem almost optimistic. Some 30% of their businesses have said that they have reduced their employment as of the second half of March. And this is perhaps evidenced in part by the 1.4 million new universal credit claims that have been made in the last month. So the coming months may look grim. And I think after weeks of worrying about loved ones and what's happening, we as business owners will continue to worry about our businesses for a good while after COVID-19 has released its grip on our health and on our NHS. But the government, I certainly, and my associates and colleagues have been quite surprised by some of the measures that the government have implemented. The government appears to have learnt from the 2008 financial crisis, where I think companies were almost expected to fold. The country allowed to tumble headfirst into what was a pretty lengthy recession. But this time around, the government appears to be trying to feed the economy from the ground up. So introducing support packages to help businesses and households keep afloat. I suppose the rationale being that when this crisis subsides, consumer spending and market confidence will be able to return faster than it did a decade ago. So if you haven't already, you should be familiarising yourself with some of these packages that I've put on this slide, principally checking whether they apply to your business and key to that, whether you're eligible. So if we take the first one, and forgive me if you're well aware of these packages and you're already taking advantage of them, but there may just be a couple that people attending this webinar might not be aware of currently. So the job retention scheme, this is when we hear it referred to as furloughing workers or furloughing employees. So that applies, that enables you as employers to apply for a grant that covers 80% of your employee's salary up to $2,500 per employee per month. And in addition to that, any associated employer national insurance contributions and pension contributions. I think I was quite impressed by the scope of employees that were covered under this scheme. So it covers employees that are currently shielding or on long-term sick, also those who have caring responsibilities or have more than one job. Fixed-term contracts are in there. Contracts can also be renewed or extended throughout the furlough period. Office holders, company directors, agency workers, and so on. So the scope of workers that are covered under this scheme is really quite broad. Then there's the statutory sick pay rebate scheme. So that will repay you the current rate of SSP that you pay to current or former employees for periods of sickness starting on or after the 13th of March. And it covers 2 weeks starting from the first day of sickness if an employee is unable to work because they've either got coronavirus or they are self-isolating at home. And again, this cover is really quite extensive. So it's covering full and part-time employees, employees on agency contracts, and employees on flexible or 0-hour contracts. So it's really quite a broad scheme. Then you've got the deferment of VAT. So obviously cash flow and cash reserves have probably been top of business owners' concerns at the moment. So in trying to alleviate some of those concerns, the government has allowed you to defer your VAT. So if you're VAT registered, this scheme allows you to defer VAT payments due between the 20th of March and the 30th of June to a later date. You actually don't need to let HMRC know that you're doing this, but the outstanding VAT does need to be paid by the 31st of March next year, and the deferral period stops at the 30th of June. So you refer back to accounting for your VAT as you usually would. This scheme does not, for any international traders out there, this scheme does not apply to VAT MOS, mini one-stop shop scheme for VAT in Europe, or import VAT, which I have to say had us international traders up in arms. The result being that HMRC has extended the deadline for paying import duty and VAT on all goods for businesses with COVID-19 related cash flow issues. However, businesses must actively apply for this payment deferment, depending on how their duty and import payments are currently settled, so if they have a deferment count already. And the deadline for that application is close of play today. So my email address is at the end of this slide. If anybody's in that situation and feels that they could be eligible to defer their import duty and VAT, then pop me a quick email and I'll forward you the link and the relevant information, because the deadline is today. Then there's the deferment of self-assessment, so allows you to defer the second payment on your self-assessment until the 31st of January, or you can use the government's budget planner to actually pay throughout this time rather than deferring the full amount. Business rates relief, I think that's been a very welcome introduction for companies who've been struggling with business rates for some time. Applicable companies are in the or sectors, you're talking about shops, restaurants, cafes, bars, cinemas, live music venues, leisure properties, and some nurseries as well. Some nurseries delivering the early years foundation scheme are entitled to that. And then you've got your business support grants. So that sees companies already in receipt of small business rates relief or rural rates relief receiving a payment of £10,000 per property. I did see some disgruntled people up in Scotland. This just applies to England at the moment, but apparently the Scottish Parliament is not distributing this support grant in the same way. In England, the payment is per property. And then for companies in the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors already in receipt of an expanded retail discount, they can receive between £10,000 and £25,000 per property. So not an insignificant amount of money, and hopefully goes some way to relieving some concerns. And then the self-employed scheme. So if you're self-employed, any of you out there, you may be able to claim a taxable grant worth 80% of trading profits up to a maximum of £2,500 per month. This is all subject to income tax and national insurance contribution, but it doesn't need to be repaid. That's the important bit. It is a grant. And then the support for small businesses, SMEs. So this is the business interruption loan scheme. So that's aimed at helping SMEs finance up to 5 million. So businesses with turnovers of up to 45 million can access loans, overdrafts, I think, invoice finance and asset finance up to 5 million over 6 years with virtually no upfront cost, because what the government's doing is it is covering the first 12 months of interest payments and any lender levied fees. So access to additional finance that might not have been there previously, and with limited to no upfront costs. So quite a good scheme if you're eligible for it. So that's just covering off some of the schemes, some of the support that's out there at the moment. And forgive me if you're already aware of it, but maybe some of it you weren't, particularly on the import duty and VAT duty. That perhaps hasn't received as much publication as some of the other initiatives. So I think in speaking to some of the businesses that we work with, there's overwhelming panic and anxiety, and that may be starting to die down a little bit now. I know we work very closely with a number of growth hubs around the country, and their advisors were manning the phones, and some of the calls that are coming through from companies in real dire straits, and the panic and the anxiety is real. But I think the go away message from this is, once you've been able to tap into some of the government support, try to reduce the panic. I know it's hard, but try and take care of yourself and keep calm. And that West survey, which we pulled up in preparing this presentation, it was obviously conducted pre-COVID-19, but it uncovered that 55% of business owners said that running a business had a negative impact on their mental health. Now, you imagine that figure now as stress levels are through the roof. But we have to prioritise our mental health and well-being at this time if we're to emerge from this crisis as capable business owners, able to restart our businesses and get back onto our growth plans. So I think keeping calm, it can be so difficult, especially when cash is running out. But try and remember to take care of yourself in a way that works for you. So, eat well, try to get some exercise in, use that 1 hour a day that the government's permitting us to have, get some fresh air. We've been blessed with gorgeous weather, which is actually helping somewhat throughout this crisis. But taking care of yourself will help you keep calm, which in turn will help you keep your staff calm, and ultimately a healthier mindset for everyone to come up with business innovative ideas when we're given the green light to continue. If faced with some difficult questions, try and balance yourself and your mind before taking any drastic decisions. It's a very dynamic and rapidly changing situation at the moment, and sometimes taking a step back to reassess and maybe reach out to your network for some trusted opinions will also help you to keep perspective. And I think we have to remember that we're not in this alone. There are many thousands of business owners right out there that are in exactly the same situation. One key point for me, somebody who loves to be in control and hates it when it's taken away from me, is I've taken a break from the news. So I recognise I'm not going to hear anything good, and this is the kind of advice that I would give to you guys. Keep abreast of the important changes and announcements, especially from Gov UK, or importantly, federations and associations. The FSB in particular has some very good sources of information, and use your local growth hubs too. There are many business specialists out there, myself included, who are offering their time free to support business through this crisis, and the hubs can help connect you to these. So approach your local growth hub. But the important thing to take away from, and this is really the focus of this presentation, is getting into that restart mindset. As I said earlier, the chief exec of EasyJet recently commented even well-established companies are going to find themselves back in startup mode. So how can you prepare? And this is when we get on to our kind of learn, refocus, improve and restart as a kind of gradual framework to help you get back into that mindset and help you emerge from this crisis improved and better able to tackle the opportunities ahead, because there will be opportunities. We will emerge from this, and businesses that have taken this downtime to improve are the ones that will emerge better and more able to take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves. So looking at the first, which is kind of what we're referring to as learn. So what learning from COVID-19 can we apply to our businesses? So having worked in the business resilience space for a good few months now, I've recognised that business resilience has become a bit of a buzzword, but how many companies can say they truthfully focus on it and strive to achieve it is quite questionable. I think we have to recognise that in today's globalised economy, there are so many external influences that almost prevent 100% resilience, but companies that strive to achieve it will kind of bend in the face of a crisis, but not break, and that is key. So, we can strive for 100% resilience, but it's actually probably just beyond our grasp. But in striving for it, we can ensure that our companies bend in the face of a crisis, but not break. Plan for the unexpected. it's worth emphasising that planning shouldn't be too focused on specific risks, but your plan must be able to be adapted to cope with the unexpected. I mean, let's face it, nobody foresaw the extent of COVID-19 and the rapidity in which the global response escalated. But those who had a flexible plan have proven to be more resilient than others. So planning for the unexpected. Do you have a crisis communications team? Do you drill them regularly? At times of crisis, communication with all stakeholders, be they employees, business partners, regulators, customers, it's absolutely critical, but it's very, very rarely well done. And I think in the age of social media, it's all too easy for messages to get muddled and to spread confusion. So clear roles and processes to follow need to be thrashed out, and key spokespeople thoroughly trained. That's absolutely essential. And actually communication is a big one moving forward as you start to relaunch your business or restart your business. What's your communication strategy going to be for engaging with your stakeholders and letting them know about your plans? Digitalization is a huge one. We are forever changed as a result of this crisis, and so are our working patterns. I mean, we as Brits, it's been quite interesting actually. We as Brits are very formal in the way that we conduct business, and we quite often will have a few pleasantries and then settle down to say, okay, let's do business. That's our comfort zone. But actually now we're seeing the inside of each other's houses. We're hearing our kids stomp up and down the stairs because they're home and being homeschooled. It's changed the way that we engage as human beings, and actually I found it quite refreshing, to be totally honest. But it's the digital technology that's enabled us to do that. And I think this crisis has shown just how big a role digitalization and everything that it implies plays in enabling agility and quick response to the unexpected. And it's more than just technology. It has to encompass a new process framework that enables rapid response to changing situations, be they disasters or opportunities. So I think businesses need to take this time to put in place a genuine digital strategy, and that's really imperative. Cash flow and working capital. Cash flow is tough, and it's frequently cited amongst the top 3 issues that keep business owners awake at night. Best practice dictates that you should have within your business between 3 and 6 months of cash reserves to cover your outgoings. It's tough, it is hard, but take this time to think about how you can improve cash flow when the business restarts. You know, can you improve your credit control? Can you make it stricter? Can you start credit checking new customers? Can you offer incentives for early invoice settlement and so on? So it's really about applying what we've learned from this crisis and thinking about how we adapt our businesses to make them more resilient as a result of this. And then we move on to refocusing. So often business owners don't get the chance to really think about their business and its direction because they become so entrenched in the business, working within the business, that they don't have the time to work on it. So take this time to refocus. Think about, what business are you in? Is it the business you actually want to be in? Why haven't you been able to achieve your growth objectives? What have been the biggest challenges? What have been the biggest obstacles? How do you move those out the way? Are you in the right sector? Is your product focused in the right way? You know, what are the external forces that have negatively impacted your business? Now, obviously, the likes of COVID-19, nobody could have predicted it, and there's very little that we could have done to have completely mitigated against that risk. But what other external forces have negatively impacted your business, and how can they be mitigated against? How crowded's your sector? You know, your competitive advantage today, does that still exist post COVID-19? Does it have longevity beyond that? Are there other ways in which you can differentiate yourself? What are your company's innate strengths and limitations? Be brutally honest and highlight what they are and put in place ideas for how they could be improved. What are your revenue streams? Are they sustainable? So, you know, companies that have adapted to COVID-19 have been the ones that have responded quite quickly and recognize that their incumbent revenue stream is just not going to work in lockdown. So therefore, they've been able to diversify, maybe creating an online presence or being able to sell online, whereas previously they hadn't. So it's kind of, you know, what are your revenue streams currently? Are there any ones that you're not exploiting? And currently, in times of crisis, do your existing revenue streams still apply? Or, you know, what are the changes you have to make your revenue streams resilient? How have you historically measured success? Is that the right way? Who are your customers? Is there a segment you're missing? Again, that goes back to, you know, your revenue streams and the products that you're offering, the value that you're delivering. Is there another customer segment that's perhaps less susceptible to any kind of crisis, if you like? How engaged are your staff? This is a really, really difficult time for staff right now. There's probably a lot of uncertain individuals out there about the future of their work. You know, even if they've been furloughed, when they get back to work, is the company going to survive? Are their jobs secure? How engaged are they? And what kind of provision do you make for them to help that engagement? Engaged employees typically go above and beyond for their company, and companies often fall into the misconception that engagement is tied to remuneration or salaries, and that really isn't the case. So many individuals are motivated and engaged by the softer side of things, which don't cost money. So look at your staff provision, look at the way they're treated, look at your culture, look at and be objective about it. You know, do you have a culture that empowers employees, that gives them a certain amount of autonomy, that helps them develop themselves and so on? Those are all areas that can increase employee engagement. And then I suppose the final one is to look at, are your current systems and processes fit for purpose? You know, are you doing things within the organization a certain way because that's just how things have always been done? Take this opportunity to kind of scrutinize those and objectively predict whether there's ways that they could be improved. That's really refocusing. And then the big one is the downtime. How do you use this downtime productively? And this is something that we've done within our own business actually recently, because we had a couple of projects slide postponed later in the year, which was fully expected. And we had a little bit of time and we thought, okay, our website is in dire need of updating. Can we enlist the services of a company to look at our website, redo it? We've got a little bit more airtime or breathing space to be able to review the copy. And that served two purposes. It got us a new website, but it's also engaged a company that, you know, had been losing other projects, and we kind of like stepped in and gave them this one. So it's kind of, you know, feeding forward, if you like. But we definitely sat back and we took a look at our business and we thought, okay, what needs to be improved? And I think that's what I'm saying to you guys. Use this downtime and breathing space to reevaluate your business purpose. And as I said before, you know, so many business owners are working in their business, not on it. And the result is the strategy goes awry and quite often the business objectives aren't met. So take this time to use it productively. Look for opportunities. It's never nice to capitalize on events like this, but they can also be a wake-up call to consider how you've been doing business. And in this case, is your business model able to survive the changes that will come from Covid-19 pandemic? Or how do you expect your customers to behave moving forward? What's going to matter to them? What isn't going to matter to them? And how can you accommodate who will likely be the new type of customers? Is there a new emerging customer? Can you digitize any of your products or services and start offering them online, as some businesses have done in response to this pandemic? Can you implement technology to balance any loss of earnings by offering new ways of connecting with your customers? So really, there's no silly ideas. There's no idea off the table. It's using this time, which is going to go past really quite fast. If you think about, we've probably got another 3 or 4 weeks lockdown, and then I think we're going to see a gradual return, maybe a sector focused return to business as usual. So you've got really quite a small period of time to focus your efforts, to stop the panic, to stop worrying about what has happened and how the control is out of your hands, but focus on what you can do, and that is to bring about improvements within your businesses. You know, another, talking about staff, how engaged are your staff? Can you take this opportunity to invest in their personal development by upskilling them, remembering that even if you furloughed your staff, they can still take part in training. So wherever possible, try best to keep your staff. They rely on you. And if you've managed a good team, they're probably supporting you through this as well. You could train your staff on I don't know, additional skills which would help them become more productive and efficient. There's plenty of online courses and webinars out there at the moment. I'm inundated daily by emails from providers offering free or subsidized courses. There's a lot of provision out there. So take a look round, see what's pertinent, see what's relative for your team or relevant for your team, and have them focus on that. That will help focus their minds as well. And as I say, training is permitted throughout the furlough period. And then use this time to improve you. So, you know, you're the business owner, you essentially, the business comes from you. Take this time to take a look at you and identify if there's any knowledge gaps or skills lacking that would enable you to become a better business owner and have a better business at the end of this. You know, if you want to always be the best, you need to work on yourself continuously. So you should always have a list of possible self-improvement ideas. And likelihood is, if you're anything like me, you probably have a list of them, but time just doesn't permit you to work on them. But this is that time, this is that downtime where you can start looking at you know, gaps that you have and how they can be addressed. Reevaluate what success means for you personally. You know, if your success objectives aren't closely aligned with those of your business, motivation can be particularly hard when times are tough, and times are tough right now, and they're going to continue to be tough for a while. So, you know, think about how well aligned your success objectives are with those of your business. If you're clear about the success that you want to achieve, then you can quickly find ways of how that success on a personal level and at a business level can be achieved. What new knowledge or skill have you wanted to acquire for some time but never had the chance? I think my list is absolutely endless. Are there gaps in your knowledge that you might need to launch a new initiative? And be honest about yourself. You know, what are your personal strengths and weaknesses? Because I think one of the biggest mistakes in self-improvement, and I've fallen foul of this myself, is focusing on trying to improve a weakness in yourself, when actually the better approach is to surround yourself with individuals who can do that better than you ever could, even if you did improve. So take this time to really critically review yourself and your capabilities and any gaps that you want to fill throughout this downtime. And then before you know it, it's going to be restart. What that looks like is yet to be determined, but the word on this sheet is that it's probably going to be gradual and sector specific. So what is your restart plan? Is it gradual and phased, or are you going to go big bang all at once? Once that green light's given, you're gonna go. What do you have to have in place in order to restart? And what's your initial capacity? You know, when you're given the green light, are some of your workers still going to be shielding, or are they going to be caring for family members and so on? So what is your capacity? Because that might dictate how quickly you're able to get up to speed. What's your communication strategy? You know, how are you going to inform customers and other stakeholders of your plans and keep it as positive but realistic as possible? So don't imply you're going to be, you know, up and running in no time if you're actually not, because that sets incorrect expectations. Be honest but positive. What are your budgetary expectations? Are your grants going to be through in time to have kind of topped up your cash flow? Are you going to be able to resume paying salaries immediately? All that kind of stuff needs to be thought about. Are there any quick wins out there? You know, from taking this period of downtime to reevaluate your company and yourself as an individual, have you identified any potential quick wins, any potential customer segments that you can go after and start that revenue building from day one. And then importantly, how are you going to implement the change and what you've learned from this entire episode? Because as dire and awful as it seems, over the last few weeks and even moving forward, there are positives to be derived from this. We are forever changed, and some of it will be good change. So how do you implement that, and how do you ensure that you don't lose focus on that once business resumes, so you don't forget about all the good stuff that you've learned and the good stuff that you want to implement? And that might be as simple as pulling together a couple of trusted employees and creating a team that focuses on that kind of business continuity, getting my words mixed up, business continuity planning, and making that a focus moving forward, rather than business resilience being a buzzword, actually making it mean something. And making it deliver something for your company. And that's really it from me. If there's any questions, I hope it wasn't too negative. I think what I'd like you to take away from today is that you've got a few more weeks of downtime, and can those weeks be used productively for your betterment and for the betterment of your business?
Thank you very much indeed, Andrea. I'm just going to bring up your profile onto the screen, and I'll downsize the presentation as well. No, that's great. It's getting sunnier and sunnier here. I can see more of my arm getting in the sun here in sunny Poole in Dorset. Yeah, some really good comments on there. Thank you for that. And no, I thought it was really positive, to be honest with you. And again, I've spoken to a lot of business owners during the course of these webinars, and also in my own business. I'm a business owner as well as being a director of the Festival Enterprise. And it's interesting, like conversations I've had with people have been positive, still inquiries coming in, but they're looking at, mid and long term. But just as you said, using this time to actually go, have what we've done for the last 30 years been correct just because we've just always done it that way? If we actually got a blank piece of paper, and these are like, CEOs saying this, we've got a blank piece of paper and said, what does the future look like? And what could we incorporate? What are better working practices, etc.? And I think it's an exercise I've started doing myself, and seeing again, like we've done here at the Festival of Enterprise, but, pivot's an overused word at the moment, but I think it's a really helpful one, seeing what other tools you've got in your toolbox that you could make those quick wins, like you say, and move things online, keep those relationships going with people who might not have any cash at the moment, might not be able to use it. I was having this conversation with my wife, who has a beauty salon, and saying, yes, cash has literally gone to zero in 24 hours, but what can you do? Because you see so much comments on social media, particularly from females, talking about hair salons, like hair, nails.
Hairdressers are going to do well.
Yeah, because it's going to blow up. Everybody's going to want a beauty salon.
And I think that's what I was saying early on at the beginning as well. That why I've been, I use impressed with a small I, but quite impressed with the government's approach to this in terms of support, because they are feeding the economy from the ground up, which means that people can probably still afford to go out there and have their beauty treatments and their hair done, when we emerge from this. And the other thing is, how often in our lives do we get this period of time to just reflect and adapt? It's been forced on us. It might not have been welcomed, but it's here now. So how do we use that productively for change?
Yeah, like I alluded to earlier, all these posts about people being in their onesies watching Netflix. I was like, I don't know anybody like that person because I'm still working, 12, 13, 14, 15-hour days, but I'm trying to use that time in the evening.
Yeah, I wonder actually if there was ever to be any kind of productivity analysis over this period, what that would be like, because people have cut out, I was talking to a colleague the other day, we're not traveling for 3 hours a day, we're up and we're at our desks, we're doing our jobs. So when I say we're forever changed, I hope that's one of the long-term changes, that flexibility of working patterns and so on become more of the norm. I mean, we've got kids at home that we're homeschooling now, so employers recognizing that, you know, we might not be able to work between 12 and 2 because we're helping them, but we'll make up for it in the evening. And that the chances are, and the whole employee engagement thing comes to life there as well, the more autonomy and flexibility that you deliver to employees, the more productive they become, the more engaged with their role they become. So I'm hoping that whole flexibility of working and becomes one of the long-lasting changes, because I think it will make a big difference to productivity rates around the UK.
Agree with you. And I was just conversation having the other day with one of our neighbours whilst maintaining social distancing, of course, as they're walking down our lane. And she was saying, look, I've actually loved being at home, and the first thing I want to do is say to my boss, you know, can I work 2 days at home a week? Do I need to be going in 5 days a week? And I thought it will be interesting to see, you know, the decision makers for these businesses, whether they carry on as normal or whether they do actually take that engagement with their employees seriously and go, actually, as you said, looked at the stats and seen how productive people have been at home whilst juggling, you know, I'm the same as you, trying to homeschool 2 girls and my wife doing the same. And it will be interesting if there's, you know, gradual change, which would be nice, I think, because I've done both things in my life. I work from home 5 days a week, and I've also worked in an office. And it's funny, before this happened, I just thought I'm tweaking around with the balance. I was doing like 2 days at home, 3 days in the office, playing around with it. And I think the balance, you know, lies somewhere in between, because now being back at home for 5 days, I'm ready to go back in and communicate with some other humans other than virtually.
Yeah. But imagine if this had happened 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when we didn't have the kind of technology that we have now, where we couldn't put faces to voices and stuff. It would have been a lot more lonely, a working environment. It's fantastic that we can hop on a Zoom call or on Teams or something and actually physically see our colleagues' faces, which makes a massive difference to our whole morale and, you know, how we're feeling about the situation. Yeah,
and I think you're right. There's a lot that you can do with regards to employees and keeping them engaged, keeping them in general. You know, having a chat last week with somebody on one of the webinars and saying, you know, that, you know, I've done like 250 episodes of my podcast with, you know, CEOs, founders from like a Ray Kelvin at Ted Baker to a Richard Reed at Innocent, and they all say the hardest problem is actually recruiting the right staff, or more than that is retaining them. And you think, if there's anything you could do to mothball those staff now, so that when, you know, this passes, you've still got access to that talent, and to have to go back out and recruit those people again is just like, what a thought, you know, what a thought.
And I think that's why the furlough scheme has been particularly well received. I mean, I know there's still about approximately 30% of businesses are saying that they have let staff go, but I think where possible, businesses have tried to use the job retention scheme so that those valued employees are still there when business resumes. So it's a particularly good scheme. Do you want me to, are these questions down the side?
Yeah, I'm literally just going to toggle myself off to preserve the bandwidth. And if you can see them, there's a few in there.
We'll need to extend furlough period for a number of our personnel. Can we still ask them to undertake training courses from home to remain productive? Yes. So Richard has asked, can we still ask furloughed employees to conduct online training courses from home to remain productive while not technically paying them? Yes, Richard, you absolutely can. If you go onto the government website, you will see the list of conditions attached to being eligible for the job retention scheme. And it does say that employees can continue training. They can't engage in any revenue generating activity, but they can upskill.
Yeah.
On the job retention scheme, can we also claim back the tax, the NIC? Yes, you can reclaim any employer's national insurance contributions and pension contributions up to the 3% obligatory employer contribution, if you like. So the amount of employer national insurance and pension contributions can be reclaimed up to the 80% of that the furlough grant allows. client of mine is doing exactly this, furloughed. All right, so somebody's replying to that.
I think if you scroll down, there's Gordon. Any tips on productive thinking time when so busy as have furloughed many staff?
I think, somebody talking about I can see you from their bedroom window. I love these chats. It's fantastic. Sorry, Gordon. I haven't found Gordon yet. Can you read Can you read Gordon's comment out? I can't find it.
Yeah. How far can I push the training envelope during furlough? Could I train on strategy or negotiation skills? I mean, I think like you said, there's so many free courses out there, isn't there? That you can.
There is. Yeah, I found him. The government, to be fair, the government doesn't go into that much detail. It says that you can't engage in any revenue generating activity, so therefore you can't be out there selling, for example, while they're furloughed. Yeah. But if it's training on strategy and negotiation skills, it's a form of upskilling. It's a form of education, and that is covered under my understanding on the furloughed scheme.
Yeah, I hosted the founder for the Allison.com, which is got like a crazy number of courses, and they're all free on there as well. If you go to Allison.com, I know they have hundreds of free courses on there that you can get your staff to.
There's loads, and I did mention the Growth Hub earlier. I think we've got a couple of Growth Hub people on this actually. I can't express enough the role that they're playing in some of this. You know, they were at the front line, manning the phones like crazy, taking some really difficult calls across the country, all Growth Hubs. But then, as I said, there's individuals like myself, lots of us that you know, offer our time free of charge to deliver one-to-ones and kind of workshops for the Growth Hubs across the country. And I think you've seen specialists step up even further, even though their kind of delivery has been pushed online. And we're now delivering, you know, our one-to-ones via Zoom, for example, at the Gloucester Growth Hub. So the Growth Hubs have been instrumental in disseminating information to businesses as and when they've needed it. So, you know, use them in anger, really.
Like that comment from James, haircuts will be like toilet rolls when we get through the week. Like that.
He's not wrong there. Absolutely.
You can see sales of hair clippers have gone through the roof with the amount of social media posts on people cutting each other's hair as well.
I know, it's crazy. You see, some products, some sectors will emerge better off from this. It's always the way that some sectors emerge stronger, others don't do so well. But I think that's all the questions, isn't it? I can't see any more.
Yeah, just one from Shari saying, anybody looking to join research into the social effects of the pandemic, how people are thinking, feeling, acting. So you can click on that link. And this, just to let everybody know, this will be available via the Festival of Enterprise website again on this platform, Crowdcast. All of our past webinars the last 3 weeks are all the replays are up there as well. And yes, that's is it MR from the Solihull Growth Hub, and there's also the Isle of Wight Growth Hub on here as well. So whereabouts did you say you were in the world today, Andrea? Whereabouts are you based?
We're in Swindon, but we work with the Gloucestershire Growth Hubs, but we work with the East Midlands Growth Hubs as well, and some over in the southeast. So I know firsthand the great job that they're doing. Yeah,
wonderful. Well, you know, so many nice comments for you there. There's literally loads of them.
I know. So, I feel quite humbled. Thank you, everyone.
Great, and really good turn up rate. GBS Growth Hub, James Roberts. Okay, cool. Yeah, it just comes up with your title, I think, when you put your profile in for some people. Okay. But no, that's really great. Really enjoyed listening to this as well. Thank you, Shari. Very thought-provoking. I just think, you know, use this time. Like you say, we don't know when restrictions are going to end. I think it's going to be extended on Thursday, isn't it? All indications are same as like France, whereas you see little rays of light in in Austria and Spain, which got hit before we did to a greater scale. Italy doesn't look like at the moment, but I think use the time productively as much as you can.
Yeah.
Keeping engaged with customers, especially those, if they haven't got any money and they can't do business with you at the moment, what can you do to help them? And like you say, keep your own mind and your own staff occupied as well, and come out strong with the other end to act on opportunities. And that's not meant in a negative way. That's only meant in a positive way, because there always are opportunities.
The whole mental health thing here, let's not sweep it under the rug. It's massively important, and business owners out there, they've built these businesses from scratch and they're seeing them fall apart before their very eyes. So focusing their minds on something that they can do rather than something that they can't affect, can't change, has to be a boost for their mental health. It keeps them occupied, and also it's going to deliver benefits for the business and for them longer term as well. So it's really important, the whole mental health thing. I know that some of the growth hubs are making referrals to mental health charities, and now it's a real thing. Some of the calls that are taken from business owners, they're referring on to specialists in the mental health field to help them get through this focus. So let's not pretend that's not happening. And I think focusing on the business and being productive during this period will help alleviate some of that stress and that worry, which is just going to aggravate the situation.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Like, canning the news, or that side of the news, and like you say, 15 years ago we didn't have social media, which only adds another layer to the negativity of false news, all those kinds of things that I think taken in short measure, if at all, because if it's important enough, I think it will always filter through and we'll get to hear about it. So
exactly, it's kind of like applying the same screen time limits that you give your kids to yourself. So you say to kids, you have half an hour, you're not going to allow yourself to look at the news channels or social media for more than that for any period of time throughout the day.
That is a good call. Well, thank you for your time. I will let you crack on with your day as well. Thank you, everybody else. If you, what's the easiest way people to get hold of you again, Andrea? And I'll pop it in here so that when people watch the replay, or if you want to add it in yourself, I've just added my contact details on LinkedIn.
Do you want me to just pop you an email with my contact details? You can attach it to the replay. Yeah,
that's cool. I can do that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, not a problem.
Brilliant. Okay.
All right. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
You are so welcome. Thank you all for being on the call, on the live webinar. Really appreciate it. We've got another one that I'll be hosting in an hour with Chris Ducker from youpreneur.com. Hope you can join me then in just over an hour. Thanks again, Andrea.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.